Good morning. Welcome to our update video on the US elections. As you know, in our weekly update, we said we're going to just quickly update about what we think about the US election coming up next week. Obviously, it's a very topical thing that's going to happen. There's a lot of discussions up in the air about who's going to win. Is it going to be Kamala Harris from the Democrats? Is it going to be Mr. Donald Trump, make America great again? Is it going to be a blue sweep? Is it going to be a red sweep? What's going to happen out there? It's all up in the air, and I think it's very close. I think it's a bit tight to call. Andre Botha's joining me again just to give his insights to what we're expecting from the US election. Andre, of all being said, that the election race is very tight. What is the current expectations from the betting polls about what's going to happen in the US election?
I've seen in the last, obviously, once Kamala joined the race, we all saw that the betting polls and all the pollsters were on the Kamala boat. But in the past couple of days, what we've seen is that in the stock market, in the betting polls, and the pollsters all believe that it should be a Donald Trump victory, and in that effect, that it should be a Republican sweep. I mean, but as you said quite rightly, the polls have been wrong before, the betting houses have been wrong before, so I think this is probably going to be one of the more contested elections out that there has been in the past since we've been born, basically.
So, with all that being said, what will be the outlook if Kamala Harris wins the election? Let's start with the blues. Let's see if Kamala Harris wins and the Democratic Party comes into election. What is the expectations that we can see from them?
So the current theory, right, is that if the Democrats win, if Kamala wins, is that we probably would see more moderate monetary policy. We probably see an event where there's not a lot of restrictions or tariffs and stuff that the Republicans want to impose. So we probably see a bit of a continuation of the Biden economy for that matter. And that all leads down the road, if I can put the Fed on the spot here, of where inflation is more moderated, where there will be an interest rate cutting cycle, more of a soft landing approach, not a huge flare up in inflation or inflationary pressures from that side. And in that side, we would probably see that we would see a softer dollar going forward. And that's just basically based on the rhetoric that, or the one side of the coin, that Kamala will be more moderate, that there won't be any huge reductions, and that the status quo will hold, and that they would have to service their debt at some point, or make an effort to do that. And for that, you need a weaker dollar just to make it more affordable for yourself. So that's probably the thinking around the initial part of Kamala presidency.
And if you then go over to Donald Trump and the Republican Party, can we expect exactly vice versa from that? Or is it a little bit more nuanced than just saying whatever happens from the Democrat side wins, just the opposite will happen when the Republicans win?
I think it's. I don't think it's a mirror image from the two. I do think that from what you read in the markets and what you expect is that the initial reaction to a Donald Trump victory would be a stronger dollar, and that's just on the premise that he's running on imposing huge tariffs. If you have to look at the whole tariff basket, what it will do to that is it will have more inflationary pressures on the dollar or on America going forward. That will probably hinder their rate cutting cycle, and would probably keep the Fed with a high interest rates. Would be good for the dollar in the short run. Also, you have to look at who is he imposing the tariffs on. Is he imposing it on Europe? Europe is also struggling. If they get into a trade war with the US, that could be bad for Europe, which would lend itself to people moving back to the dollar. So in the short term, I think that that the dollar would be on the front foot if there's a Trump victory. But in saying that, you have to also look at the broader scope. What would the policies, once they are defined, they're not clearly defined at the moment, but once they're defined, what would they do? Would they increase the deficit? And that also brings into the same argument with the Kamala Harris campaign is, if the deficit continues to grow, the best way to service that deficit would be on a weaker US dollar basis. So I think in the short term, a Trump victory would lead to a stronger dollar. I heard there's been rumors of the dollar going back to parity. My personal feeling, what I've read, is probably if there's a significant dollar strength.
Sorry, Andre, just to stop you. When you talk about parity, do you talk about parity against the euro, against the pound, or which currency do you talk about?
No, I wish it would be dollar parity against the rand, but it will be against the euro. So 1-to-1 on the euro. But I think that's still a million miles away, if I can put it that way. I think probably 105 is probably a more sustainable level against the euro in the short term. But in the longer term, both the Trump and Harris campaigns wish for a weaker dollar. So I think that will be the play in the longer term. In the shorter term, I think if the Trump victory, there will be a stronger dollar.
So longer term, what you're essentially saying is both going to continue to have fiscal spend, continue to run big budget deficits, which is not bode well for the dollar in the long run. So short term, different stories, but long run, it's sort of more on the similar side of boat.
Yeah.
And then
yeah. Sorry, continue.
No. Just if you just think about what will that mean for equity markets, perhaps, just in your opinion.
Well, my insights for equity markets, that is from what I've seen and what I've read. Basically, the whole argument is that if Trump comes into power, that'll be good for equity markets because it will reduce the corporate tax rate, which will mean more profits, which would be that the business will look a lot better, which will boost equity markets. There's also certain avenues that will look good, or companies that will be big tech and the energy space, because Trump has built his whole rhetoric around more oil production and energy produced markets and sort of that. On the Kamala Harris side, I think if the status quo continues where it is, I think it would be the sort of same for equity markets. The one thing, if it's a blue sweep of the Senate and everything, is that they will introduce higher corporate rates or tax rates, and that will be the polar opposite of what Donald Trump's doing. So that also could influence profitability of companies, and that could be a burden on the equity markets in the long run.
Okay, so in a nutshell, if you can just sum it up in a nutshell, next week we can probably expect a lot of volatility from the markets. What do you think will happen to our local currency next week, perhaps, just taking the US election into account?
Yeah, we had a talk about it yesterday in the office, and the 1 week volatility regarding dollar rand has spiked quite tremendously, and that just means that people aren't sure that they know what the direction of the currency is. I think, as you quite rightly said, there's probably a surge in volatility coming, and I think that if there's a Trump victory, we could probably see the 18 rand level quite quickly. But in that, saying that, with everything and with the headlines being left and right all over the place, I think that we could have a wide trading range next week. So exporters need to be not sitting on their hands and waiting for 1850 or something like that. Once we see that 18 rand level, if all goes to what we think is going to happen, that will probably be a good level for exporters to start climbing in again after being on the back foot for quite a while now.
Andreas, thank you very much for that. We'll be back with everybody next week. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you very much, Botha.